So today, let's talk about the top 10 things that I wish I would have known about homesteading before I started. Number 1, be prepared to be flexible. I am not a flexible person by nature. Once I have a plan or an idea of how something should go, if it doesn't happen the way that I think it should, my whole world just comes crashing down on me because I'm just that type of person. I like things to go to plan. And that is probably one of the best character building skills that I have learned, was to be ready to go with the flow, to be flexible, especially when you start adding in animals, because everything that they shouldn't do, they're gonna do. So that would probably be my number one thing that I wish somebody would have told me beforehand, is just be willing to be flexible in your plans and your ideas. Number 2, not everybody is going to be supportive of this. The biggest majority of people that I tell what I'm doing, they're very supportive. But there are those that are both family, friends, strangers that are like, that's stupid. Why would you do something like that? You just go to Walmart. Who cares about your canning? Who cares about this? That seems to be one or the other. Surprisingly, the greatest divide of support versus haters that you're gonna get are actually gonna be from the homesteading community themselves. There was a blog out by Fuels Homestead. They just posted it pretty recently, and it was just so true. I was just reading it and I was like, this is so true. It seems like to me that labels are very important for some reason, and you have those that have been there before you that are encouraging and that say, I've done this. If I can do it, you can do it. Keep pressing forward. Don't give up. I know it's hard, but try it this way. They're very encouraging. But then you also have those that are, well, I'm the only one who knows how to do this. If you don't have a dairy cow and 100 chickens and 10 acres, you are not a homesteader. If you don't have 2 years worth of food in your house, then you're not a prepper. For some reason, the labels seem so important, and it's not important. It's really not. What's important is how you feel yourself. And I know that's kind of like a emotionally charged thing to talk about, is just what you feel inside of you. I don't feel like I'm any less of a homesteader than somebody who has a huge farm, because I think a lot of times we compare ourselves to these people because they've been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years, or, they've had access to money and they were able to get this. But the reality is when you start, it's totally different than when you're going to end up. And you do kind of have to start small. You shouldn't expect yourself to start out where they ended up. So just know, not everybody's going to be super supportive of you. Not everybody's going to be in your corner, and not everybody's advice is going to work for you. Number 3, always plan to buy or have more space than what you think you're going to need. I think this is a very important thing, because when I bought our house, homesteading was not on the radar, not even close to a thought. And we had a little less than an acre. And I'm not saying you cannot homestead on 1 acre, because that's exactly what I'm doing. There are people that produce tons of food on a space this size. So it's not that, but if you have these dreams and aspirations of wanting to, have horse-drawn carriages, or, have milk cows or beef cattle, make sure when you go to buy property, which you could do a whole video on buying property when you're homesteading. But if you're going to buy property, if you think you're going to need 3 acres, get 5. And the reason why is because, textbook says, you only need this certain amount of space for an animal, which is true. But what they're not telling you is you also are going to need to think about things like rotational grazing. And, just because you can, mine, on a technicality, I have enough space in my barn and the fencing that I had to have 100 chickens, but that doesn't mean that would have made them healthy to stuff 100 chickens in there. Think about that in the animals aspect too. You don't want to overcrowd, because overcrowding also causes health issues and all that. So always plan to have more space than what you think you're going to need, because you never know what you might decide you want to do. Number 4, don't space your plants too close together. This was my first year gardening. And, you know, when I'm doing the whole thing, like, I'm so excited, got the land tilled, and I'm like, oh, look at my cute little tiny baby tomato plants. And it says on there to give them 12 inches of space and no less than 12 inches. So I was like, oh, 12 inches. So you got my little measuring tape out and I'm putting them 12 inches. No, just no. I don't care what the package says. I would double that, honestly. Weeding is so much harder. Tending to them are so much harder. Those cute little tiny baby tomato plants turn into these mega bushes that will just take over your life and take over space, and they're intertwining with each other and they're going everywhere, and you got to remember to prune these things, and it's hard to get in there if they're all clumped up together. So make sure that you are planting your stuff with plenty of space. Otherwise, it's going to make it hard on you. Number 5, weeds get crazy fast. I was sick for a week, and in that week space of time, like, weeds just overran my garden. And, you know, before planting a garden, I had done lots of research. Of course, I'm that type. I like to know what I'm doing before I do it. And so I'd been doing all this research, and everybody was talking about weed prevention and weed management, and I was like, who cares? Just tell me about how to take care of the plant. Until I planted a garden, and then I realized how prevalent and how hideous weeds are. So that is something you definitely need to take into consideration, is how you're going to deal with the mass amounts of weeds, because weeds are ridiculous. So make sure you have good weed management in mind before you even plant your garden. 6, it takes a lot of produce to produce canned goods. You know, I was floored, honestly. Like, when I planted my little garden, it's not big, I just kind of wanted to get my feet wet on it. I went out and I got all these cans from my granny, and I was like, I'm gonna fill every one of these up with that garden. No. I was shocked the first time I canned salsa, how many tomatoes it took. Like, I had this big batch of tomatoes and all of these jalapenos and all these onions and all these things, and I was ready to go. I was like, yeah, I'm about to can like a ton of salsa. So I'm like washing all these jars. I think I prepared like 25 jars. 25 jars. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I started cooking it down and blending it up and doing what you got to do. And I packed 5 jars, and I was like, that's it? Like, all of that just gets me this. So that is a good thing to know ahead of time. Plant more than you think you're going to need, because you think that this little bit of produce is going to get you a ton of jars, but it really will not. Like, I did watermelon jelly. 1 medium to large size watermelon only got me 3 pint jars of jelly. So make sure you're planting way more than you need, because you are going to use a lot. Number 7 kind of goes along the same vein, which is plant more than what you think you're going to need. And it's more than just for the large amount of produce it requires to can, but also because, like, I thought, okay, we don't eat a ton of corn, and so I'm only going to plant 1 row of corn. So I did, but I only had 2 stalks come up, and I got 4 ears of corn off of both. That's it. So that is something that you really need to take into consideration. It's not just the canning, it's the fact that some things won't grow, some things will die, some things will get eaten by bugs. You know, you never know. These plants are tender, and they're small, and they're young, and any number of things can happen. And the worst thing that could possibly happen if you plant too much would be that you've got more to can, or you've got stuff to give away. So always plant way more than you're ever going to use. Number 8, baking and canning take practice. The first time I made bread, it was so dense. It wasn't that it was hard, it was just thick and dense. Like, 1 slice and your guts would feel like they were going to explode, because once it hit your guts, it was like, because it was so dense. It takes practice. When I first started, like I said, my bread was dense. I had to learn how to make biscuits. My biscuits were harder than rocks. It just takes lots and lots of practice, lots and lots of times of messing it up. Canning is going to take lots of practice. You know, I've had a couple people ask me about canning videos, and although I really want to show you how to do canning, I don't feel like I'm capable of teaching something that I'm just now figuring out myself. So my biggest advice to you is, if you are just learning to can and you're wanting some canning recipes, watch experienced canners like Linda's Pantry, or even better, get canning books like the Ball Canning book. You can't go wrong with that. I actually have an Amish canning book. So just read up on it. You know, some people like the Kindles and stuff like that. Like, you can look on Pinterest for canning recipes. I personally like to have the book in my hand. So read up as much as you can. Always follow the recipe. You are not experienced enough to be dabbling with it, so do what it says to do. And just make sure you have all of the equipment that you need. You know, research, make sure you have everything that you're going to need ahead of time. Lots of working space. This is very space consuming, but including the baking. Baking is very space consuming. You're going to have places to knead. It just takes practice, 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 practice. Don't be hard on yourself if it doesn't work out the first time. Try it again later. Number 9, animals die. Animals can die for tons of reasons. My very first death on the homestead was my rooster, my little young rooster. You know, you can research all you want to research. You can watch all the videos you could possibly imagine, and you still are not going to have the kind of experience that you would once you put your hand to the plow. And unfortunately, when it comes to farming, homesteading, animal husbandry, that could cost lives with your animals. So it's very important that you research, but at the same time, like I said, I mean, experience is the best teacher, because I could have read until the cows came home and nobody would have ever said, hey, you know, if you got cats and you're trying to keep them from eating your new young birds, don't put him in the bathroom, because he might learn how to fly and you don't know it, and jump in the toilet and drown himself. Stuff like that happens. So I've had that. There's been some accidental deaths. A baby chick died for absolutely no reason that I know of. And it's not just the chicks or the young animals or the old animals that die. Young, healthy animals will die for no reason whatsoever. Just like Flappy. He was fine 1 hour. An hour later, I go back out and he's dead. It happens. So be ready to be emotionally prepared for that, mentally prepared for that, and also be able to have somewhere or a way to dispose of bodies. That's something you have to keep in mind, especially if you're working with large livestock. You're going to have somewhere to bury it or dispose of it if it does die. So that's just something to keep in mind. Animals do die. Finally, number 10. So number 10, I feel like, is the most important piece of advice I could possibly give you if you're just starting out the way that I am. And that would be, I wish somebody would have told me to be patient with myself. You know, I'm very guilty of this. If you don't have a lot of people around you to show you what to do, and you kind of have to reach out to the internet community to learn, what happens is you come across all these videos that tell you if you don't have, you know, certain amount of skills, that you are going to be a failure, that you have to, your farm has to look a certain way. It has to have a certain amount of animals, a certain amount of acreage for you to even call yourself a homesteader, you know, otherwise you're just playing. And I think that you kind of get caught up, and especially Pinterest. Pinterest is of the devil. Pinterest will show you these beautiful photos of these perfect, pristine, clean coops and these beautifully sheared down goats with these beautiful flower-laden pastures and these perfect, picturesque barns. They don't show you the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. They don't show you, you know, the poop and the pee and the throw up and the other things that you deal with. They show you these manicured gardens. They don't show you the hours that it takes to weed it. They don't show you the back-breaking labor it takes to hoe it. They don't show you the crops that fail. The internet has a way of showing you only what they want you to see. It's very rare that you come across, you know, pages that are going to show you the ugly. They're going to show you the truth. They're raw, the real deal. And it's even more rare, and this is exactly why I started the channel, it's even more rare to come across someone who's going to show you how to do it from the beginning. I mean, that's why I did this, is because every person I found, I was watching and I would hear them say things like, you know, I've got my barn and, you know, last year's crops did this. And I'm thinking, but how do you start? Don't show me how to retill your garden. Don't show me how to replant. Show me how to do it from the beginning. And because I couldn't find anybody, that's what drove me to do this, because I sure had no interest in making a YouTube channel. This kind of happened. This was born out of my desire to give someone else something I was looking for myself. And just to show you the mistakes that you make along the way. Hopefully you won't make these mistakes if you watch me do it. But you have to cut yourself some major slack. You've got to be willing to forgive yourself, because mistakes are going to happen. I don't care what skill you've learned, what person you've watched. Just like my chicken dying by floating in the bathtub, you're going to mess up. And that is most important, that you forgive yourself, because there are days that I have done things that I'm just like, I just want to give up. I'm done. I can't believe I'm this stupid. You know, you really will start to beat yourself up if you live in the world of YouTube and Pinterest and Facebook of, this is, you know, I've got all my stuff together and this is how you have to be. You can't live someone else's life. You can't have someone else's homestead. You have to make your own. And sometimes making your own requires you to make mistakes. So that is something I felt like was the most important, is making sure you're willing to forgive yourself. So that's it, guys. 10 things I wish somebody would have told me when I first started doing this. If you want to, you guys can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you like and subscribe here. That way you never miss videos from us. I love you guys. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I hope these tips help you. See you later.